So before I jump off, and I have a ton of notes today, this show is called Intentionality, Remembering Your Divine Blueprint. And the purpose of this show is to awaken you, to open your eyes to how magnificent and divinely created this world is. And that's what intentionality means. It means that there's a divine creation behind everything, everything, down to the littlest atom up to the biggest element of the cosmos. And better yet, the universe has left blueprints and puzzle pieces for us to find, to learn this language and to understand how truly connected and magical we really are. So that is the focus of this show. I'm really glad that you can join me today. I wanted to do one other introduction, and this is very much for my family and for other people who are not familiar with some spiritual terms, as well as where I get my information from. So this show focuses very heavily on sacred geometry, quantum physics, mathematics, frequencies, all these great things that I actually have no educational background in. So I put that caveat out there. My information is coming from a very different source. It's coming from source, the source of all information. It's coming from the quantum field. And I'll explain that a little bit. It's coming from my personal guides, from that part of me that is still connected with the divine. So when I say guides, what I mean is the spirits that are with you to help navigate your life. It's that little voice in your head that tells you to turn right instead of turn left, that tells you when you need to rest, or gives you that chemical reaction to somebody you've never met before. All these are examples of that divine information that you're being given to help you live a easier life, a life that flows versus a life that is constantly beating your head against the wall. So my guides recently, specifically, have been very scientific. I have been getting information from wonderful beings like Einstein and Tesla, Madame Curie, all of these wonderful scientists that spent their lives actually looking at the mysteries of the universe. And a lot of that's not published, or not overly published. That's not what they're well known for. But this is the type of information that I've been getting. So when I say I'm not a scientist, I'm most assuredly not, but the information I'm getting usually comes to me in images. And then I will go and I will research the subjects and put together the patterns based on the information that I'm being fed. So I wanted to really caveat that with everybody so you could understand where my information is coming from. So with that, I'm going to dive right into my presentation for today. So like I said, we're going to get really deep into collective consciousness. I want to explain what this means. And then I also want to show you some examples of this in the real world, examples that you see every single day that you might not have thought about. Let's get the slides to work for me. So the definition of collective consciousness. Collective consciousness refers to the relationship between the mind and the physical world. So this encompasses everything from memory, cognition, inputs to the senses, awarenesses, very much like an animal sense. You know that fight or flight. You have an intuition that tells you that you need food and sleep to live. These are very much that relationship between the physical and the mind. Oh, and I lost the page here. So what we use this for most often is to understand ourselves. We have that sense of self. That's very much what consciousness is. So if you think of that in those terms, or even self-conscious, when you have a negative sense of self, that's very much what consciousness is in a nutshell. Now, collective consciousness is shared beliefs, ideals, and moral attitudes across the globe. These are shared beliefs among people that are not necessarily linked to each other in any way, shape, or form, who have never met, who have not shared the same space. collective consciousness is, it's hard to explain in just a definition, but a sociological professor did a whole research paper on collective consciousness, and he found, or his findings at the end, where he believed collective consciousness is what gave us a sense of society. It is what made us fit into the world. So otherwise we would be all individual, but collective consciousness gave us a sense of community, a sense of solidarity, that we were not alone. So I want to give you a couple of examples of what collective consciousness is. So the pyramid mystery, and if you watch any shows like Ancient Aliens or mysteries of history mysteries, you'll realize that there are similarities in architecture across the ancient civilizations that should not exist. It should not exist. These people had no links to each other, not physically, not mentally. You can argue about aliens and all that other stuff. That's not my show. But what these suggest, and there's several thousand pyramids in the world, and they're still finding more. They found them all over. And if you look at the picture on the left-hand side, Mexico, Egypt, and Indonesia have almost identical blueprints for their pyramids. They didn't just take the structure of this cubus, which is a sacred shape with 4 sides going up into the pyramid shape. Their dimensions were almost identical. Why? Why did these civilizations build these structures to such precise dimensions? The sizes are similar. The way they lined them up to the constellations are identical. So you've got the north, the south, the east, and the west. Everyone lined them up to follow the path of the sun, to line up with different constellations that were important for their societies. And moreover, they were all developed around the same general time period. That being said, travel was not done between these places at that time. So they talk about, you can see the picture on the right-hand side has some of the timelines. And like Chichen Itza and some of the other ones in Mexico, those are several thousand years old, several thousand BC. Same thing with the Great Pyramids in Egypt. These two places had no connection. So how did they work off the same blueprint? And there's a couple of hypotheses about this. One of them, like I said, being aliens. The other being that when a powerful sacred thought is given to the earth through humans, that it is sent across the earth at the same time. And what I mean by this is cultures in different places will be given the same download of sacred information or remember the same sacred information at the same time or roughly the same time. This is very much, in my mind, a version of collective consciousness. All of these pyramids started popping up at the same time in different places, in areas that they shouldn't exist. And they had the same purpose. They were ways to worship, to collect power, ways to do sacrifices and rites of religious origin. They knew that this design was sacred. And nowhere have we found the origin of where these all came from or why there's so many on the planet. Like I said, there's still pyramids being discovered. They talk about one in China that is being hidden. You can see it under the mound of earth, all the way up in Antarctica, just places where there shouldn't be pyramids. So this is, according to my spirits, a wonderful example of collective consciousness. The idea came down that these pyramids were sacred structures, and that idea was sent across the collective consciousness of humanity. Another example of this is the symbology that you'll see throughout these different ancient cultures. And symbology is one of my favorite things to study. I love the Egyptian hieroglyphs. I love the Mayan and the Incan symbols, the Celtic knots. You can see, I don't know if you can see it. I've got symbols tattooed on my body. Just the one for the record. But what I noticed when I've done these different classes on symbology is that there are some symbols that cross cultures. And again, they cross cultures that should not have met, and there's no record of them ever meeting. And moreover, these symbols mean similar things and even have similar features. So the example I used here is the tree of life. So the tree of life symbolizes the connection of all life. Talks about the roots rooting into the ground, the trunk of humanity and life, and then the branches of eternity. So plants are essentially immortal. When they die, their seeds go back into the earth and they can be replanted. They're re-part of the earth. Now, this symbol has been found in hundreds of different areas across the world. So one of the examples that I gave here, so we've got the Egyptian tree of life on the left-hand side. And this was worshipped as an example of eternity and divine immortality, which is also very much what the pyramids were for them. They were a way to move into the sacred. The one next to it is a Mayan symbol of the tree of life. And you can see the similarities, the branches coming out and going down into the earth. They were worshiping it. They're clearly worshiping it in this image. The one on the far right is a Celtic version. And this culture, along with, I saw this in Mexico a couple of times, have multiple birds in the tree branches. This is also across the religions. Christianity, Judaism, and Islam all have a tree of life symbol in their religions. Especially Judaism has the wonderful bubble chart. So do, Assyria, the Hindus, the Greeks, and the Macedonians have all had these etched in stone at their homes. So this is a great example of a symbol, a very simple symbol that had similar meaning across the world, a sacred meaning. And nobody can tell, well, everybody says the origins of the tree of life, but every story is different. No one person has been able to say, this is where that symbol came and this is how it spread to the world. So as above, so below. The tree of life replicates and is a symbol of that immortality, of our birth to death and then rebirth. There's also many, many religions and cultures who take this a step farther. So the as above, so below is a very famous alchemy phrase. And what it means is what happens in the above world, what happens in heaven is mirrored here on earth. So the more divine we are in our spiritual way, the more divine earth is by nature. So what I realized when I was researching common symbols across the world, and I've seen this in my own travels, was that religions across the world, cultures across the world believed in this three world system. So the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world. And if you look on the left-hand side, this is a Celtic version again. To them, the lower world was the source of all useful information. This is where they got in touch with nature and the animal kingdom. The shaman lower world, the one in the middle, was very much the same. Helpful spirits, power animals. This is where you go to get in touch with that base, that baser instinct. In the far right, that's the Incan cross. So I saw this when I was down in Machu Picchu and just recently. The lower world is the world represented by the serpent, which is earth. It's the spirit world. It's also the realm of demons, but it's represented by the serpent, which is also in pagan tradition, the symbol of the goddess, the symbol of the Mother Earth. The next world up, across the board, the middle world is earth. So this is the day we live, the way we live from day to day. And that is the same across the board. All of these religions have that same belief that we are in the middle world. And Incan, you can see this is represented by the puma, which was considered a very sly animal with basic instincts to kind of take over and conquer, a little bit aggressive. But these are the two, this is the world where we use our five senses. This is where we're human, where we have to evolve. The world above it, the upper world, is that, again, a similar across these religions, across these cultures. So in the Incan tradition, the upper world is represented by the condor, and shaman is represented by the spirits, the ancient ancestors. And the Celtic religion is represented by the universe, the gods, the spirits. So this three-tiered system of connection is another example of a sacred divine theory that was shared across the world. And this is not just in these ancient cultures. These are cultures that go back to BC. This is also in Christianity. We have the heaven, the earth, and the hell. In Buddhism, they have the three planes, three realms of existence. So this number 3 is one I'm definitely going to talk about in more detail, because what this is this is our connection as a soul. This is our connection to the cosmic world and the connection to earth. It's that link of 3, which is so important in every single culture across the world. And I haven't found a single place where the number 3 wasn't divine. But nobody can tell me where it came from.